Welcome to the Hit Zero podcast, where our goal is to build better cheer athletes. We just wrapped up our weekly Facebook and Instagram Live where we discussed one of the more pressing topics in cheerleading, and that is tumbling and fear when we are trying to progress or learn new skills. Now, just like we mentioned on the blog, we have 4 things that we can approach or address when we are dealing with fear. Number 1, progression. Are we at a level where we are ready to try this new skill? Now, there are certain points along the way and certain progressions that we need to follow in order to feel comfortable with a new skill. So when we look at things like back walkovers, back handsprings, back tucks, we have progression that we need to achieve before we try the next skill. And the reasoning behind that is because each skill builds from one to the next, right? So we need to be able to do our back bend before we try a back bend kickover. We need to be able to do a kickover before we try a walkover. Just like we need to be able to do a layout before we do a good full. So making sure that we're at the right point is essential, absolutely crucial. Number 2 is spotting. Now, this was one thing that we discussed quite a bit, and that's spotting. Now, you as an athlete should be able to determine if you feel comfortable with someone spotting you. Now, it may be the fact that there's a coach that you prefer to spot you over another. And if that's the case, you should have no fear in requesting another coach to spot you. Or if you haven't had another coach spot you before, perhaps asking another coach to spot you on a particular skill that you're struggling with might be what you need to break through. Now, as a coach, we have to put our pride aside and recognize that not all athletes are going to be comfortable being spotted by us. Now, it doesn't make you less of a coach. It doesn't make you less of a person. It just simply means that everyone has different areas that they're comfortable in. And we have to put our pride aside and say, what's best for our team? What's best for this athlete specifically? So if we have an athlete that's struggling, maybe even offer, say, hey, would you be more comfortable letting, the other coach or, whoever other coach you may have, letting this coach maybe spotting you once and seeing if you can make progress with this skill. So spotting, making sure that the athlete feels comfortable with whoever they are entrusting to keep them safe. Number 3 was our safe landings. Now, we look at cheerleading and we typically have, depending on where you look, we have 4 to 5 different types of surfaces. We have our trampoline type surface. We have some sort of spring or rod surface, like a spring floor or a rod floor. We have a cheer mat, right? So just a hard floor with a foam mat on top. And then we have our basketball floor or wood floor. Now, we also have grass and sidelines and things like that, which we can kind of lump into other categories. But, we have these 4 to 5 big standard surfaces. Now, we also have the ability to have in-betweens on these things. It doesn't always have to be, tumble track to spring floor. Don't forget, we can also do things like unfold a folding mat and place that on top of our trampoline or our tumble track. So that gives us that in-between of not quite a rod floor, but stiffer than a tramp. So remember that we can modify our landing surfaces to give our athletes more comfort in landing versus, being stuck on one floor. And the reason for that is if you think about it, if you were to have any athlete and you could, any skill out there, any sort of flipping or twisting skill, if you told them to do it into a foam pit, there'd be no fear. They'd have no problem doing it 99% of people. When you do have that one off kid every once in a while, and that's just fine. But most kids are fearless when it goes to jumping into a foam pit or a crash pad at the end of a tumble track. So we can use that to our advantage and say, hey, if we're comfortable landing on this surface, let's see if we can incrementally modify it to make it more applicable to their particular cheer experience, whether that's sideline cheer, all-star cheer on the spring floor, at a basketball game, whatever the case may be. Play around with different landing surfaces to try to see if that can stimulate a reduction in the fear that they may have. And lastly is our counts, right? So if we can back up and just count everything, put it to 8 counts, having something else to focus on while we're doing our particular skill can override some of the fear that we have. So if we're doing standing tumbling, 5, 6, 7, 8, go 1, and just, force yourself to go on that count. Or if you're tumbling, running tumbling, having every single piece, hurdle, making our hurdle on account, making our handsprings touch on account, making our landing on account, and being aggressive, it can help take our mind off of the fear that we may have with that skill. And then also feel free to use that counting with the other pieces, right? So make it counting plus add a safer landing plus have a new person spotting you, and do combinations of these 4 things to give you the progress that you expect to have. Now, there's also one other area of fear that sometimes goes undiscussed, and that's when we have our athletes that already have skills, but all of a sudden we hit a mental block and we can't do that skill anymore. It's not so uncommon that we have an athlete that is working on higher level skills, working on fulls, working on, double fulls, working on Arabians through to continual passes, and all of a sudden they can't do a handspring. And it's not that they lost the ability to do a handspring, it's that for some reason their mind has completely shut off and they can't get past it. In that case, there's nothing wrong with regressing back, right? So let's say I'm working on, a full, and then all of a sudden now I can't even do a back handspring. I'm stuck. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to work back walkovers until I get my back handspring. Or I'm going to go to a different surface and going to do it there until I feel comfortable and ready to progress back to the spring floor. So our goal with that, if we take a step back to a previous progress point, is to pretty much get irritated at ourselves, and not at ourselves, I should say, but irritated at having to do an easier skill that we just say, gosh, I'm so sick of doing this thing. It's so easy. I'm just ready to get back to my skill, and try to flip that switch of I can do back walkovers so well, I can do them in my sleep, and help us to make that flip that switch again to say, well, back handsprings, if I had these too, just as easy. I should be able to do them. Let me get back on the floor and do them. So taking a step back on your skill level is not a bad thing to do. It's not a step back. It's just saying, you know what, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to rewrite some of my fundamentals in my brain again, and then I'm ready to jump back in. Okay. Now, this point that we made was kind of focused on coaches, but athletes, this is really important for you guys too, is fear is nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to beat yourself up about. It's nothing to belittle yourself and to think that you're less of an athlete. Fear is crippling. And when you have something that causes you to be fearful, it's very challenging to get through that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having fear either with a new skill or hitting a mental block with an old skill. But as coaches, when we have these athletes, remember, what skill may be easy for us, that we've spotted 1,000 times, that we've done 10,000 times. These skills are still new to a lot of these athletes. And a lot of these athletes are young, and their minds are a whole lot different than ours are now. We know that if you throw a back handspring funny or a back tuck and you land odd, that there's a high likelihood you're not going to seriously injure yourself because you're on a safer surface. But these athletes don't know that yet. So we have to understand and be supportive that when we have an athlete with fear, we cannot drive out fear with force. It has to be something that they overcome themselves. And the way we do that is we guide them from the front, not push them from the back. So when you have an athlete that's struggling with fear, do not stress them out by forcing them. It doesn't matter if it's 10 weeks before competition or 10 minutes before they go on the floor and they hit that mental block. There's no way that they're going to overcome it by feeling stressed out because somebody or someone is bearing down on them, trying to force them out of fear. It's only going to raise stress hormones in their brain. It's only going to make them clam up or lock down more. Okay, so always, 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 when we're dealing with fear, We have to uplift, not push down. I just wanted to let you guys know again, we'll be coming down to Worlds here in a couple of weeks. On the live video, we talked a little bit more in detail about the jump guide that we have coming out. That's going to be an absolutely free resource for you guys. We are so close to finishing it. We have 2 more pieces to do, and then it will be ready to be distributed out to you guys. And again, free resource on how to completely overhaul your toe touch. You're going to have a beautiful toe touch, and it will be able to happen in less than a month. So less than a month of work with this guide, and your toe touches will completely change. That's it for this video, this episode. So happy to have you guys with us again. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Take care.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to check out thecheerdoc.com for more content. Also, if you found the material today valuable, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It's very much appreciated. Thanks for listening, and have an incredible day.